Hi, I'm Angela Morton, and I work on a grant project called Recovery is Community and WPA. Welcome to the next segment of Recovery Is, a video series to bring awareness of substance use issues and to increase access to treatment, prevention, and recovery supports. And I'm here today with two really great people that I love working with and really appreciate all the expertise at the table on a variety of subjects. But today we're going to talk with Sandy Soloski, who is the coordinator of strategic initiatives at Adagio Health, who also happens to be the recipient of HRSA Rural Communities Opioid Response Program grant that we work together on. And we're joined by Dr. Mandy Fauble, the Director of Clinical Care Services at UPMC Western Behavioral Health at Safe Harbor. Thank you both for being here for Recovery Is.
Well, thank you for hosting as always, Angela. It's great to see you. And Sandy, it's so great to see you. And, here we are talking about recovery is relationships. And so when Angela, you were getting us started, I was thinking about the great relationship we have with Adagio and partnering together on this grant. But it brings up all these other issues around substance use disorder, because sometimes we get so caught up in thinking about the individual person dealing with their substance use that we kind of take it out of context and forget that that person may be a mother, a father, a partner, a parent. They have all these relationships, a staff person in an organization or a business, a person in a church. They're related to so many things in the community, and certainly substance use disorder, it touches more than just the person, it touches everybody. And Sandy, I know you have some really interesting perspectives on that and some insights around substance use disorder and relationship. What do you want to start us off by thinking about?
Well, thanks for inviting me, folks, for this conversation. And Mandy, what I was talking about when we got started was a book by Craig Nagin called The Addictive Personality. And in that book, he talks about addiction occurring when a person begins to rely more on an object, which in this case we're talking about is the drug, than they do with the other important relationships in their lives. The idea being, the author goes on to talk about 4 natural forms of relationships in everybody's life: the relationship with yourself, the relationship in regard to your spirituality, in your community, and why am I forgetting what the 4th? Oh, with family and friends. And the idea being that there is a misperception when a person starts using drugs that a drug actually becomes more reliable than people, because it's the use of the drug, the effect of the drug is more predictable than any person's reaction. And when an individual focuses more on their relationship with the drug than on their relationships with others, they sort of drop out of the protective wall of humanity, all their relationships, and end up getting lost and sometimes dying. So recovery, I think for me, and is about helping a person stay sober long enough to repair their brains, or as close to sober as they can come. I'm all about harm reduction too, but to rebuild their relationships so that they can rebuild their safety nets in their lives. We all need community. And on our level, I think that relationships with organizations that serve people, it's important that we know for good service delivery what we do, how we can help, services we provide. Your turn.
Yeah, well, I think you're just giving me lots of good stuff to think about, because I think what you highlighted is like the power of the drug on a person's physiology when you talked about like the brain needing to have an opportunity to repair. But the brain is intimately intertwined with what's happening to us and what's happening around us, and our relationships are part of that. So, as a person maybe starts to utilize drugs, they may actually experience a pulling away by their family or friends. Their supports may withdraw. As maybe they experience consequences from that use, we play it out a little bit further, maybe they lose their job. Those connections are gone. So there's this sort of grief and loss and isolation, which then actually kicks up a lot of the negative experiences and the negative thoughts and emotions that might further really sort of feed why a person might continue to have some of those cravings. So we can see that relationship is really a big part of the sort of cycle of use of substances. But at the same time, you're hitting on something so positive, which is how relationships also are a big part of the cycle of resilience, and how they're a big part of healing and a big part of the recovery journey. And that connection is such a huge key piece of that.
Definitely. Thank you. That really added too. And that's, yes, I think it's the most important thing in recovery is for people to rebuild and find their place of belonging. And that's not as easy, that's easier said than done sometimes.
It is. Do you want to say more about that? You know, how the barriers that you think there are to repair and reconnection?
Well, I think, when people use drugs, you know, their withdrawal, sometimes their behavior under the influence of drugs can really put distance between them and their relationships. I think, people can misbehave when they're using drugs. That's the truth. And that's it's you, the individual may want very much to reconnect with others, but the other person involved, whether it's a spouse or an employer or a teacher or a friend, they also have had legitimate experiences with the person who has been using drugs that may put them on guard from moving closer. And so I think there is it takes time because people need to first learn skills to reconnect without the use of drugs, practice those skills without any promise of what sort of response they're going to get from others. So they need also to build the resilience if someone is not interested in rebuilding a relationship. So there is that possibility. And I think it's about skill and insight, learning skills to interact with others, learning skills to manage the normal seasons of life that we all face, the disappointments, the loss, and as well as celebrate the joys. But you know, they used to say in the 12-step program that the first year is really important and that you need to be careful with relationships the first year of recovery. This is old school, but it's still one legitimate path to recovery. And I had an old timer describe it to me when I was a young therapist that that the year is important so that you go through all of the seasons, all of the anniversaries, all of the markers in the rhythm of our lives, so that you can learn to manage your feelings without disruptive or self-sabotaging behaviors and know yourself better. And so time and support, and I think there's a challenge in life for all of us, but particularly when you're trying to manage without the use of sedation or drugs of some kind.
Certainly. And there's so many, like Mandy had said, there's so much room for great conversation around this for people who may be struggling with substance use, trying to keep those connections, but also for anybody who cares about someone who is struggling. There's this balance between, we really want to promote that we're reducing stigma and we're promoting acceptance and understanding of what addiction is and how it changes a person, while also maybe not enabling by having appropriate boundaries for self and for others. So it's not a matter of a black and white, not abandoning someone, but not necessarily being there holding their hand while they're using a substance. That being able to be there in a loving presence with understanding of addiction and substance use and recovery and harm reduction, as you had said, that we do work with a lot of people who maybe are not as ready as people may say, hey, we want everybody to be ready for complete abstinence. And that sometimes isn't realistic. And so part of what we do with our grant projects is meeting people where they are at the present time, and that recovery looks different for everyone. So as you said, it may be just a matter of being a loving presence in someone's life so that they're not isolated, that you're still in their lives or still in each other's lives, while also encouraging and being positive and being accepting of, this is part of your path and I'm here for you in whatever way is needed.
Right.
It is great. And I think when you highlighted, each person kind of has to, we set our own fence post, right? Or we make our own boundaries. So we might all be at different places with that. If we love someone who has a substance use concern, and that may be based on our own mental health, or it could be based on our own recovery status. It could be based on other trauma that we're having in our lives or other responsibilities. So what that boundary could be for people could look different. Currently in the field of harm reduction, we encourage people that use particularly more opioids. We encourage people don't use alone. Not everyone is in a place where they can have that boundary of saying, okay, I understand that because of the life-threatening nature of this, I'm going to be prepared with my naloxone. For some people, they're going to say absolutely not. That's okay. We all have to kind of sort out our own place to keep ourselves well when we love someone or have a personal relationship with someone who has a substance use concern that we're aware of. I think something, Sandy, that really came to mind as you were talking about that first year is also that sometimes when, particularly in a family setting, when the substance use starts to become more and more out of control and the family life starts to unravel, we can often hang every hat we have on the substance, right? Oh, if you would just quit drinking, or oh, if this hadn't happened, everything would be fine. There's this scapegoating of, it's the drug, that everything is about the drug, or everything is about the person with the substance use, instead of kind of coming to that realization that the substance use may be a symptom of a whole other bigger problem, or that potentially the family is going to have to actually work together to repair the relationships, that it won't be that the person stops using the substance and everything goes back to the way it was before. The way it was before is unlikely for a relationship. It's only the way forward. And helping people kind of wrap their minds around that, there's so much grief and so much work that truly goes into that repair. And so it's not just the person impacted by the substance use that needs that year. It's often people around them that they need a lot of time to really go through the actual repair process, which is very dynamic.
Absolutely. And change isn't something we do readily, but definitely needs to be embraced in recovery. And I do think that more and more we're looking at harm reduction as the most compassionate model for everyone. And I think that is definitely true, meeting people where they are, reducing risk so that there is increased safety for change to occur, really important. Right.
Said that so perfect.
Great.
Really, it is just setting the stage from an acceptance place, just compassion and acceptance and understanding of substance use and how it changes a person and your needs, their needs. And I always have to bring up, Mandy, you mentioned naloxone, and when we're talking about harm reduction, one of the big pieces of what we do in our grant projects is increasing awareness of what's out there in terms of prevention. And there's such a high rate of overdose and death from substance use, and it's it's tragic on the individual, on families, on society, and it's preventable. So when we do education about naloxone, or often known as Narcan, they're nasal spray kits that are available in every county in Pennsylvania and across the country. So if you call your local county substance use program or drug and alcohol program, whatever the name of your local single county authority is, they have naloxone for distribution for anyone who wants it. So very little questions asked, sometimes just offering a brief training if needed, and then you can take Narcan and have it at home or give it to somebody who needs it. And I bring that almost every time I have a conversation. I want to make sure that people know where they can get naloxone and potentially save a life with it.
Yes, and it's free. And so since we are talking about relationships today, I think that that's a big piece of what we need to emphasize, is that if you care about someone who has an opioid use disorder, one of the most compassionate things you can do is get that naloxone, because you just don't know. If you work in a public place, if you work in a setting with other people, having the naloxone is a way that you can contribute to immediate life safety. But it's most important for families and friends and coworkers, because certainly the person that overdoses can't readily administer it themselves. It's really up to all of us that are in relationship with that person to think about that. And I know that we're going to be coming up on time, so I also feel like it's important to say that anyone that is in a relationship with someone with a substance use concern, that they're not alone. There really are resources out there for families. There's the Recovery is Beautiful. We have a virtual family support group. The 12 steps, there's often associated with the local chapters a family group. There's a teen group a lot of times. A lot of treatment facilities also offer supports for family members, even if their loved one's not at a place that they're really ready for treatment. But we know, as much as we're talking about, okay, maybe about 1 in 10 people in the United States might have a concern. Well, what does that mean? For every one of them, there's probably 4 or 5 people that they're connected to. And so all of a sudden you start really realizing that the vast majority of us, we all know someone, and many of us, it's someone very close to us, and we don't have to carry that alone. We can connect to other people, and in that connection, do some of the work that we might need to do to be able to repair ourselves based on kind of what we've gone through with the person that has had a substance use concern, to be able to reach back out to repair those relationships as the person works through their own recovery journey. And of course, there are lots of formal supports for that, and getting involved with counseling or getting involved with a more formal program is always a great resource for people that are learning to kind of navigate what it's like to be in a relationship with someone with a substance use disorder too. Sandy, anything that you want to add to that with your experience in this area?
Well, I think, we could go so many places talking about substance use disorders. I mean, we could study to get our PhD in addiction medicine. But it seems that that in terms of relationships for the person who's struggling with substance use, that the danger of being isolated is that people don't have the opportunity for early identification. Like, we sort of leave each other alone. If someone is using drugs, we sometimes figure, okay, you go do that, and then they're gone. I'm not being very articulate right now, but I think that we need to take better care of each other when we notice the small things, when people start dropping out or not participating or not engaging in conversation, or maybe there's a dishonesty that comes that we either overlook or just don't pursue. I think we need to be, accountability is kind of a strong word, but in community, to notice when people are not okay, to notice in a loving way, to sort of pull them back. People get separated from the herd, and like in the wild, it's more dangerous out there by yourself. We need to pull them in before crisis, before it can snowball to a crisis point. I think that's important.
It is.
I
And
think that's a great place to end because it's something we all can do. It's something we all can do. I love that.
Certainly. And I always need to add that if there's anybody who is listening who is struggling with substance use issues or knows somebody who is, we want to make sure that you have resources and have somewhere to turn. So the county office that I had mentioned who has naloxone, in every county, there's a single county authority for substance use treatment and prevention and recovery support and case management. And you can call your local county office and ask for the substance use department or substance use prevention or treatment department. And so that's in every county. There's also a national hotline that is very easy to remember. It's 1-800-662-HELP, the letters HELP. And we also have a website for our grant project that Mandy mentioned, www.recoveryisnwpa.org. And we have some training resources and this video that will be part of the Armstrong series of Recovery Is. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here with us, Sandy, and thanks, Mandy, for always your expertise. Thank you for joining us for Recovery Is.